Let's step through it now piece by piece. So there are 5 key metrics, and each one of those you've given it 3 levels. I guess you could add more, but let's stick with the 3 levels for now. The first metric that you use is listen, brackets, but filter. What does that mean?
Yes. So I think the but filter is almost the most important thing of that. Everybody's going to go, yeah, of course you listen. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth and all of that kind of stuff that we hear all the time. You've got to go in and listen. You've got to listen to people. But here's the thing. You've got to find out what matters. And you've got to therefore be able to go, okay, I've now interviewed, and this is a standard thing for me. I go in and I literally interview. We call it chat, right? But I'm basically talking to anybody and everybody involved in the project, junior, senior, stakeholder, customer, whatever. And I find that they all love the fact that somebody's come and asked them. Right.
Yeah.
There's very rarely somebody goes, no, I don't want to talk to you about this project. Right. They come and they pour their hearts out, and you just have to apply a bit of a filter. And my metric for filter is like, is this person moaning?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I getting some constructive feedback? I have a low tolerance level for moaning. I don't necessarily show it to that individual, but I'm like, right, okay, sort of thing. If you were in one of those sessions, if you see me stop writing notes while the person's talking to me, it's because I'm filtering out what they're saying because it's not relevant. And that's a sense of listening to what matters. And I think that's the really important bit. And there are even techniques in there that you can apply when you're doing that. If somebody says something 3 times in an interview, that's a good indicator that it's bothering them. If it's moaning, you can still filter that out. But actually, sometimes you go, now you've mentioned so-and-so, just tell me about that a little bit more. So, that's the real active listening part of it. But the filter is almost the strongest part there, because if you listen to what everybody wants from everything, do you know what? That's probably why the project's in a problem in the first place, right?
Right. But the first part of listening is asking a question. So what is it you are asking to get the information that you are going to find useful? What are you looking for?
So I think I'd just tune this a little bit, bearing in mind I'm usually brought in at the point where everybody knows it's not going well. So I can cut straight to my first question, which is, how's it going for you? Right?
Okay.
What's happening here? Because that opens up a can of worms, right? If you ask people a really open question, how's it going for you? There will be people who go, yeah, it's all right. And you go, tell me what's all right. That's just human stuff, right? You just have to get through that. If you're not in trouble and you want to know how it's going, then I think you focus on the the goals and the outcomes. So you can talk to people and say, okay, so how do you think we're progressing towards our goals? Right? That's a very specific
What
question.
goals? What
Yeah.
goals?
Right, where people will go, well, I don't really know what the goals are. Okay, let's talk about that, sort of thing. Or, yeah, I've done all my goals. I don't know about anybody else. Okay, let's talk about how you're a bit of an island, So
Mm-hmm.
all of those answers give you something, which is why you've got to listen, right? And I think that the question is, as I say, slightly different if it's not in trouble, as to if you're up against it, you can go straight for the jugular of like, what do you think is going wrong?
Mm-hmm. And I know when I start a new role myself, and you do that sort of thing, you start to meet people, like the key people, and gradually everybody. There is also a tendency sometimes for people just to go, I haven't been promoted for 2 years, or I'm not paid enough, or I don't like the leadership, or no one listens to me. So it's not necessarily about the project, but I'm wondering, when you kind of pull on that thread and unplug that person, and they just come out with all of this personal stuff, what do you do with that?
So you've just nicely taken me on to the second question, which is find the talent and the drainers, right?
I wish I was that clever. That was a mistake, an accident.
Let's
But let's
brush over
go
and
there.
pretend it was, yeah, exactly.
Let's go there. Yes.
So basically, the talent and the drainers, right? And what do I mean by talent? Talent's a pretty broad word, yeah. I think I'm looking for those people who, like, when you say something like, okay, so where do you feel the project is, and what are the challenges for it? If they go straight to, well, I had to cancel my holiday last month, and
Hmm.
I haven't been given a pay rise for 3 years. That's something worth noting down, right, and taking to the senior leadership. I don't ignore those things, but that's not what I've been brought in to solve. In this particular example of a project turnaround, I've not been brought in to solve that. And so what I have to do is, give that person some assurance that I'm concerned about that, and that's something that make some notes and say I'll move it on. But then sort of say to them, okay, but just suspending that for a moment. what about, we're all here, we're all in the boat together, we're rowing in the same direction. What's going on? And so you don't ignore it, but you get past it to actually the information. And then what you'll find is you'll get two people. So because everybody's got a personal gripe all the time, especially if the world's a bit crap, because nobody feels great about that, right? But then the talent and the drainers. So the drainers will not give you an answer. They'll just keep going, right?
Mhm.
They'll just keep, it's that person over there, or it's that, or have you seen the scope?
Right.
We haven't got any top, right? And you just keep going, and this is where, at the start we were saying I'm the hatchet man. I'm a really, really nice guy, Jeremy. Right? I'm known for being really nice, enthusiastic, and positive, and so I will manage those conversations with these people, almost like a soft sort of like approach to them, and go, okay, well, this is really interesting, but how do you think that could apply to maybe us doing better here? Well, I don't know about that, but the thing is, I had to work late last weekend. Those people are like, thank you for your time. Put them to one side. You're not going to get anything out of them. They're just going to drain your time. Then, even if they're the cleverest person in the whole program, if that's their mental attitude, you're not there to turn that around and make them into a productive person. Not in that guise, right? You might be if you've been brought in to do other stuff, but
Yeah,
coaching and the like.
I've said this a few times, but I always look for knowledge, skill, and behavior. And behavior is, as you've just described, really the most important thing. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how hardworking you are. If your behavior, your communication, your attitude is off, you got a problem. And I always discover that there's one or two, three people who don't make a fuss, who almost nobody knows about. They just sit at that desk in the back and they're kind of running the place.
Yeah, yeah, and you got to find them, right? And your point about behaviour is really valid, because they could be the talented person and have poor behaviour, and if you get into a situation where all the talent is poorly behaved, then actually it's kind of understandable why you got there, and that's probably a blow up rather than a
Yeah,
rescue mission, right?
yeah,
And so that's a different thing. But if you can get talent, particularly if it's somebody who's been sitting at the back, and they might have a little moan to start with, so don't get too distracted by the moans. They might be like, well, I told them it would go like this. So I told them.
hmm
And then if you give them an opportunity to say, so what would you do? How would you? And they go, well, let me tell you,
yeah,
right? That's valuable, right? Because that's not a moan, that's an opinion. And you can really lean into that. And I don't want to ostracize people who maybe aren't the top talent, right? If you're a mid-level engineer who's just kind of plodding and you're never going to be that superstar principal engineer, if you do what you do well and you turn up with the right attitude, you could help rescue this project. Yeah.
yeah,
And so you've got to embrace those people and everything else that goes with large program delivery, communicate to them, tell them what's happening, tell them where the challenges are.
yeah,
But finding the people who are going to help you on the journey and the people who are going to stop you on the journey, and dealing with that early. And therefore, one of the things I always say to any CEO or anybody else who brings me in is, you have to give me the authority to do this, or at least to call it out, and then you'll action what I'm saying, because otherwise it's just a report and it's ineffective, right?
yeah.